Hi, everybody. Today we are going to circle back to a case I have discussed before, the Barry Morphew case. As you may know, Barry was charged with the murder of his wife Suzanne, who disappeared on Mother's Day 2020. If you don't know much about the case, I would recommend you go back to my previous videos and watch those first. And I will put links to those videos in the description box below. Now, like anyone else, I do not know what happened to Suzanne or what happened the day before she was reported missing. Unfortunately, neither does the prosecution, or then they failed to convince the judge that they knew what happened, and no way in a month of Sundays would they have been able to convince an impartial jury. And finally, the prosecution had to decide whether to save face and come back to fight another day or to go with their egos and proceed to trial. In which case, had they lost, there would have been no coming back. Now, people are up in arms about this, and I know that some people are jumping from channel to channel for commentary on the situation, and that is why I decided to give my 5 cents worth because I'm not a legal eagle, I'm not an attorney. Although I do have some knowledge because I used to help my sister study. She is indeed an attorney. But I think maybe I'm the person who could give this to you in plain English. Now, from the day Barry Morphew was arrested, I said that it was too soon, that there wasn't enough solid evidence. And I then went and followed the preliminary hearings, dissected it, and talked about it. And you, as I said, are welcome to go watch my previous videos. Only once before in my entire life had I seen such weak evidence. And it was the first time ever that I saw such an unprepared prosecution and witnesses for the prosecution. It was clear that the investigation was not even close to being concluded and miles from being anywhere where a person could be convinced on a charge as serious as murder. Just two very good examples. When one of the investigators was questioned during the preliminary hearing about Suzanne's secret or private bank account, he actually said on the stand that he had been away and had not yet had the time to look into it. Now, if I was a judge, I would have stopped proceedings there and then and send them back to work. But a real judge, of course, cannot do that. He had to listen to all the evidence presented. And then, of course, there is the DNA found on the glove compartment of Suzanne's vehicle. To date, all we know is that it traces back to an unknown sex offender in another state. However, what was also mentioned in the preliminary is that DNA was also found on cables inside the home. DNA, which was a mixture of Suzanne's DNA and another unknown male, something which the prosecution then preferred to steer away from or stay away from. Instead, they stuck only to Megan Duge. I don't know how to say her surname, Duge or Duke, Duge, only sticking to her testimony, in which she basically explains that the comparisons of the glove box DNA to an offender was based on limited genetic information. So it is clear where the prosecution slipped up and likely willfully omitted evidence or preferred not to extend their investigation in a bid to win their case. And it is no wonder that the judge, quite rightly, so decided to exclude this witness, not because of the witness herself, but because of the prosecution's failure to comply with obligations under Rule 16, which is, in plain English, to fail to turn over all evidence or discovery to the defense before a trial. The judge said, there, the prosecution's actions amount to negligent and reckless disregard of the rule and subsequent orders. And it does not matter who you listen to on YouTube or which side of the fence your favorite YouTuber is on. This is a fact. And you yourself can go back to the transcriptions of the preliminary and find these things for yourself and ask yourself, so where is this or that evidence? Things were mentioned, but then skipped over and never talked about again. The prosecution, in my opinion, badly misjudged Barry's defense counsel and the judge's intelligence and ability to concentrate and do his due diligence. So, at the end of the day, the judge made the correct ruling when he excluded certain witnesses. As you or them, the prosecution in this case, cannot and may not decide what evidence you wish to hand over, what to exclude, what to ignore, what not to pay attention to or investigate further. You have to, or the prosecution has to, cross their T's and dot their I's. I can't tell you how many comments I read asking, how could the judge exclude testimony on the phone tracking and the electronic tracking, etc.? How dare he? Well, for the very same reason. Let's take witness Ken Hicks, whose testimony was one of those excluded. Now, Mr. Hicks prepared a telematics report on Barry's truck. And although Mr. Hicks's report was initially allowed for the purposes of establishing a timeline, and Mr. Hicks's report was then accepted as one from a possible lay witness, Mr. Hicks was, however, not initially brought in as a witness, and Commander Alex Walker was actually then questioned on his report. Yet, the prosecution, and in their own motion, admits that they do not have any analysis or summary or done any investigation related to Mr. Hicks's extracted data. Thus, once again, an incomplete investigation, or alternatively, the defense chose not to disclose those parts of the reports to the defense. We don't know, and neither does the judge or the defense, but the judge only has the rule of law at his disposal, and therefore he had to rule that the prosecution broke or failed to comply to Rule 16. Now remember, this is not about whether Barry Morphew is guilty or not, or what we, the prosecution, or anybody else may think. It is about the law and the rules of the law. So why did DA Linda Stanley rush to bring charges against Barry Morphew? Now, Linda Stanley obviously jumped at the opportunity to make a name for herself. And in my opinion, it is as simple as that. Linda Stanley became the DA at the office of the 11th Judicial District in January 2021. And on May 5th, she gave a press conference at which she discussed the arrest of Barry Morphew, during which conference she said she had a solid case against Barry Morphew, which, at the end of the day, by the admission of the DA's office now, was indeed not true. In my opinion, not only did she seize the opportunity to make the headlines, but she was also caught up in the gossip, the excitement, and uproar stirred by a specific ex-cop, now YouTuber, who went way further than his call of duty, to the point where I felt he was stalking Barry, visiting the town Barry grew up in, talking to people who knew him growing up, and even watching him, observing him the night before he was arrested. Now, this narrative of Bad Barry created a frenzy which spread like wildfire, and Linda Stanley was caught up in it. She had to be the one who took Bad Barry off the streets. But you see, it is not about Bad Barry. It is about proving that Barry is bad, and that she couldn't do because their investigation was not completed and was based on the assumption that Barry was guilty. And this was obviously fueled by certain YouTubers' narrative, a narrative they then even took to Dr. Phil, along with the help of Suzanne's brother, of course. Now, however, we have a situation where not only did the judge have to exclude certain witnesses, but where Suzanne's brother, who was a huge advocate for the Bad Barry narrative, is now no longer certain that Barry killed his sister. And we have Suzanne's sister saying that she's not certain that Suzanne is even dead, and would therefore prefer to have caution on their side and for Suzanne's body to be found. So we have an overall situation here of uncertainty and a case which cannot be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Unfortunately, once again, there are certain people who cannot accept that they were wrong, cannot accept that they played a role, even if just a small one, in this whole fiasco, and who are now trying to blame, in particular, the judge, Judge Lama, and dares to question how or why he, the judge, excluded evidence from 5 witnesses. Well, I suggest this person go read and study the motions, the defense's reply, and the judge's rulings and comments before making any further accusations, because they are going to land themselves in trouble, heading in the same direction they are going in. I do, however, appreciate the honesty of one of this YouTuber's guests when he informed him that a baseless assumption is not enough to ask for another judge. Well, Judge Lama was then also indeed the second judge on the case. So I have no idea what certain people want. Do they want to try every judge until they find the one who gives them the verdict they want? It does not work that way. At this point, it is likely that the investigators will return to their job and hopefully they will have learned something from this debacle. Linda Stanley should hang her head in shame for wasting the court's time and money. And we all do still want justice for Suzanne. And I sincerely hope that this time everything will be looked into. Everything, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant to the prosecution. Another matter I want to address quickly before ending this video is the matter of DV. We will call it DV, although in reality it is domestic violence. But as you know, our videos get flagged for certain language, so henceforth I will refer to domestic violence as DV. Now, DV is a serious issue, something many women and to a lesser extent men go through. As someone who had my lips split open on one occasion, needing stitches on the back of my head on another, DV is something or a subject I do not take lightly, and I feel seriously affronted and angry at, in particular, a certain YouTube creator who is running with the narrative that Suzanne Morphew was a victim of DV. There is absolutely no proof of it. Not even her daughters had ever spoken out about abuse in the home. The daughter's boyfriend actually told police that she never told him about any form of abuse in the home, although it is known that there were indeed relationship issues. I'm not saying there was no abuse. Once again, I wasn't a fly on the wall. But again, there is no evidence of it, not medical records or factual testimony of abuse. By creating a narrative that there was, in fact, DV in the home, this creator is, in fact, denigrating and belittling real abuse. I hate to say this, but having an affair or numerous affairs, the words, the actions, be it body language or coldness towards a partner, is indeed also a form of mental abuse. And that brings me to another favorite subject addressed by commentators and creators in this case, namely victim shaming. Victim shaming is a disturbing tactic in cases of rape, assault, and even murder. But one cannot exclude facts from any case, and in particularly not from a murder case. Unfortunately, there is evidence of an affair in the Morphew case and an admission by the very person Suzanne had an affair with. Unfortunately, when you dig into one party's electronics, you have to do so with the other. And unfortunately, Suzanne's affair was relevant to the case and relevant in the search for Suzanne. In this case, it is not victim blaming or victim shaming. It is an important part of the evidence. And had Barry been guilty or had the case continued, it could have been used and would have been used by the prosecution as a possible motive. Unfortunately, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, and the court cannot just allow the prosecution to use it as evidence and not allow the defense to use it as a defense. And therefore, it is logical that the defense would use it to likely prove that there is a possibility that Suzanne could have left with someone else or allowed someone else, whom she had a friendship with, into the home. It just is what it is. The defense cannot be blamed for doing their job. Okay, guys and girls, so Barry Morphew's case had been dismissed without prejudice, so who knows? Most likely, law enforcement and the prosecution will now take this personally, as it is indeed a huge embarrassment to them, and they will go back to the drawing board. Hopefully, at the end of the day, I, like everyone else, sincerely hope that at the end there will be justice for Suzanne, and even that she will be found, no matter whether she's found alive or deceased, and that the perpetrator, if there is one, and even that, as I said, is not 100% certain, but that he or she or they will be brought to justice. Okay, my dears, that is it from me for today. Until we meet again on the next video, please be careful out there and take care of yourselves. Bye.